This is the Authority Company Podcast, conversations with leaders who are building the future. Hola, I am Joe Pardavila, and today's guest, Matt Domo, helped build the foundation of modern cloud computing as the founder of Amazon Web Services database division and a leader behind systems used by billions every day. Now the author of Everybody Wins, he argues AI transformation is a leadership challenge, not a tech problem, and introduces the me experience where systems adapt to people to drive real performance. As CEO of Fifth Vantage and advisor to Fortune 500 leaders, he's helping organizations navigate one of the biggest shifts in business. Matt Domo, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great. How are you? Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here today.
You're very welcome, Matt. I'm super excited to get into your book, but if you wouldn't mind indulging me for a minute, because, I've been following AI in the periphery. Obviously, this is your world, but I've been following it for a little while. And I wanted to bring up something that I sort of say tongue in cheek is that you hear all of this about AI replacing these menial jobs, replacing workers. Trust me, we all know that storyline. But I always like to play the devil's advocate and be like, hey, how come we're not building an AI to replace CEOs? Because
Okay, that may
okay,
happen.
so why is it this discussion on the fact of replacing workers, which I get, we technological advancements, industrial age, technological age, I get it. But I've never heard one say this one thing will replace the CEO that makes $75 million a year and flies a private jet. How come we don't get any of that right now, Matt?
Okay, because people aren't picking up on the signal. You asked a pretty multi-layered question there, right?
Yeah.
So let's unpack this a bit. First off, ignore the doom headlines. It doesn't help. It drives clicks, gets advertising, but doesn't make you better, doesn't help you inform what you need to do. So let's set this straight. Most of the discussion with AI is about tools and LLMs.
Right.
That's not where the battle's won. The battle's won about how the modern business runs in the age of AI. That's leadership, that's strategy, that's changing how the business is managed, strategized, and operated. Notice I didn't tell you what tool to use.
Right.
So, the question that I have for you there is AI is not going to replace the CEO. The person that knows how to use these as a leadership strategic asset is going to replace the CEO. And that's for every role in a business. Like, look, you can't use old methodologies to use new stuff. It just doesn't work. And so that's the signal from the noise that people need to take away. Like a lot of people ask me, and I know I'm meandering, but like Matt, it's like when people are laying off people for AI, I'm telling you, I call bullshit. They're using this because they overhired during the pandemic. Now we're moderating back to the mean, and it's an easy excuse for me to blame it on efficiency for my errors. And I know this for fact in many businesses that's what they're doing. And so look, it's to the public's detriment, right? You're causing fear. You're causing inaction. That doesn't move the needle. It doesn't make your business better. It doesn't delight your customers. It doesn't make your key stakeholders or shareholders any happier or have any more faith in your ability to lead. So why are you doing it?
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. All right, and one more thing, if you wouldn't mind indulging me on this, is we're almost at this rubber meets the road part of the AI journey where Wall Street is going to wake up one day, Matt, and say, "Are you guys making any money off of this?" Because
We're already there.
but that's what I'm saying though. That's the bubble that people are fearing. The idea of like $1 million companies spending trillions on infrastructure costs, electricity, all that stuff. What's that going to look like when? Because I often I like to equate this to the great Netflix correction, Matt, from a few years ago. Because remember years ago, companies were under the edict by Wall Street of like growth and subscribers, and then I often joke that Wall Street woke up one day and say, "We don't care about subscribers. Are you making any money off this?" Then all of a sudden you started seeing all these companies slash their budgets at streaming companies because they weren't making any money. When does this happen in the world of AI?
It's going to happen for the next 18 months. Just candid. And I'm going to give you the antidote for it too, because that's implicit what you really want, right?
Yeah.
So look, in my book, I cover a whole chapter about AI washing, right? And that's what I call it, where you lightly use AI, you sprinkle it in your marketing materials and your sound bites so it sounds there. But what's missing? Value. What is your entire question is, when am I going to see value? I'm willing to give you faith, but you got to show me signals, like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Right.
You got to show me there's a there. That's what you're being asked for when you hear these headlines, when you see this. It's like, and look, it's legitimate. Like, look backwards in the pandemic. Even the best of the best made errors, right? They overbuilt fulfillment centers because they felt the work from home trajectory changed, and it did to some degree, e-commerce, but then some of it reverted back to the mean. We have overbuilt, you know, capacity to deliver things. We overhired too, as we
Right.
discussed. So if you're a leader, what's the antidote? Nothing's changed. Work backwards from your customer. Understand what delights them. Understand their problems. Understand how you make it better. Make it simple, easy, frictionless at every touch point in their brand journey. These technologies enable you to do this at a scale and a price point we couldn't do before. So, what's the signal? I'm not talking about tools. I'm not talking about LLMs. I'm not talking about theory. I'm talking about how you need to change the business to operate in this era. The leaders that get that and show that signal and show the impact of doing it well are going to win. The ones that continue to do the washing and the hype with no substance, prospects don't look good, Joe.
And that dovetails beautifully into the title of your book, which is Everybody Wins. And let's connect that to the business leaders. What's it mean in practice for a business leader when it means everybody wins? Because I think, as you know, Matt, you come from this world of corporate that like you have to win so someone else can lose. But your idea is that everybody wins. And anyone listening to you speak over the last few years or even on this podcast right now is like, you're kind of an optimist in this world. Tell me about this idea about how everybody wins.
Okay, yeah. So your question is, what is the book? Right? And
Yep.
so really everyone wins is a leadership blueprint for how the modern business operates in the age of AI. And the results, even in pre-order, speak for themselves. It's ranking number one in business strategy, business management, operations, and AI categories. That's not an accident. It's sitting along seminal books like Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, The Innovator's Dilemma, Playing to Win, Measure What Matters. This isn't about tools, it's about how the business runs. So, why do I call it Everyone Wins? AI doesn't transform the business, it exposes how the business needs to change and operate, right? So, and why is that? Look, we've reached the age of me. A core part of the book's premise is the me experience. For decades, we've forced onto our customers, our constituents, the internal workflow of how we build and operate and force our customers to conform. People don't want that anymore. They want you to get them what they want, where they want it, how they want it, personalized to them 24 by 7, right? And look, you can see signals. You get packages from FedEx. Now you're starting to get ETAs, right? You go to the hyper personalization. You talked about Netflix. How great is it? Netflix is the viewing experience for media. It built an operating playbook. It's not just streaming, right? And so the businesses that get it in their lens, in their market, and use these to change the way they go, that's what this is, right? And so it's not tools, it's not LLMs. Really, if it was the LLM, you're putting that bet of your IP on your balance sheet along with every other company. That's not differentiation. That's not IP. It's your data. It's what your customers signal. It's what they want. It's how you look at the existing business and change what you need to do to delight them and offer new offerings to keep them coming back. And so that's, so you asked, why do I call it everyone wins? People focus just on the tech and customers, but look, if you operate with this model, you delight your customers, you build loyalty, and you create a data moat. You look at how employees work backwards from the employee experience. People underestimate the impact of very productive, effective, and happy employees. So to look at that experience and how it transforms, how do we make the employee experience better and kind? Right? So you do that, employees win. Happy customers, productive employees, excellent results. Leadership wins. They're making good calls, which makes their stakeholders, shareholders, investors happy. That's why I call it everyone wins.
I love it. Love it. Good stuff. It's funny. You talk breaking it down so simply. It just immediately makes me think about Apple's recent sort of pivoting. And it's not really a pivot, but almost like silencing of Apple Intelligence. You remember 2 years ago, you couldn't escape an Apple Intelligence commercial and talking about how Apple Intelligence was going to revolutionize the iPhone. And then they realized no one wanted an iPhone for Apple Intelligence. They didn't care. So now you don't even hear the word Apple Intelligence everywhere because they recognize customers don't care. They just
Yep,
care about what's on their phone.
that you're right, Joe. The moral of the story is just because you build it doesn't mean they'll come. What you just said, core part of the book is I ask about the 4 Ws. Who are you doing this for? What makes it better? Why do they care? And where will they experience it? Your customers, your employees, your stakeholders, and then work backwards to drive that. What you've just demonstrated is even the best brands, right? Apple's one of the most renowned companies in the world, got it wrong. So that's what this book, the methodology is about, right? You can do this. And the other thing that I analyzed is like, look, leaders are smart. You get lost in the theory versus the signal. Explain it to me, like you said, break it down. And then I end every chapter with the 5 things to go do right now. And then if you really want to go deep, I give downloadable resources off the website for free that you can customize and get deep with your team to go make this happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let's double click on a couple of the concepts in the book. Well, one is the burning platform concept. You talk about it, and why do most leaders? Well, explain what that is for the folks who haven't read the book yet. But why do most leaders wait too long to act?
uh, okay. Look, there's a multi-layered thing here again, right? Well, let's talk about what's going on right now. We're not going back to the way the world operated in 2018 and 2019. That world's over. The pace of change, the capabilities that are here, and the signal of what customers market, your where you live, it's all about speed, simplicity, efficiency, make it better because we're all oversubscribed. We're all overstimulated, right? The people that get that concept will now figure out the formula, right? So if you're an executive, there's, the one lens to take is this is hard. The other lens is there's no better time to be alive than right now. Things to do are easy to get these things going. The cost of doing it's cheaper than ever before. And look at the results that are coming out from diagnoses of cancer to, the advancements in fusion where we're going to get clean, limitless energy. Really? Who would have thought that just 4 years ago? Right. So now, what does that really mean? The delta between decision and execution and speed wins. Decision to doing wins. The age of the perfect plan is over. It rusts before you implement it. So, back to this, let's face it, many executives are nothing more than chief whack-a-mole officer. I've got all the pressure to keep the business running that's got us to where we are today in whatever form. Then I have pressures for market change dynamics, the horror of the headlines you talked about. I may have happy customers, I may have angry customers, and everywhere in between. Then I've got a board that's putting pressure on, show me, improvements on the balance sheet today.
Right.
Where do you balance your time, Joe? Really, honestly, that's where we are. And so, you asked about the burning concept plan.
Yeah.
What people don't realize is the business could be burning. You don't see the signals yet because you're here. And understandably, as I laid out, but that doesn't mean you don't take the step back and understand it and take the steps to go. And so that's what the thing is, the burning platform concept. You can't kick the can down the road and then think an army of fire trucks are going to come fix it at the end. You're going to be left behind by someone more agile, more focused, and that can execute. So the time's now. So how do you carve it out as a leader? That's really it. I hope that answers your question.
That's good stuff. Excellent. You mentioned customers a few times there, and in the book you talk about the me experience. What does that change about how companies experience? Talk about this me experience and this me X framework.
Yeah, that's the core kind of framework and operating, playbook of the book,
Okay.
which is we talked about the age of me. Your customer me wants simple, easy, frictionless, hyper personalized value at every touch point of your brand, everywhere I access it. Your employees want the same experience about how they deliver that value and operate with the changes you're going to make in the business to deliver it. And leadership needs the same experience so they understand what data informs what decision and reduces that deciding to doing delta in a way that meaningfully moves the needle. Each one of those is a me, isn't it? Every one of them has a different need. And what the overall thing is, for decades, like I talked about earlier, we force the way our products or workflows or things, the way we built the systems and software to force the people around it to work that way. People don't want that anymore. And it's proven in many cases it doesn't add value. They want it the way they roll. Your leaders, your customers, your employees. And this is about using AI, data, systems, decisions, the way the business operates to satisfy the needs of those me's and not force them to conform to the way we want them to do it. Does it make sense? And it's
Love.
proven and it's popping up everywhere from Google Maps to we talked about FedEx and UPS and you get it from DoorDash. We're just at the beginning. And those people that it's a catalyst moment. The people that realize this signal and capture it as a leader and how you change your business in the modern business world, they're going to win.
You talked about AI washing earlier, and I want to go back to that because I think we all see this impulse of leaders to be like, okay, we make widgets, right? How can we use AI to make the widgets better? And everyone is just at trying to layer AI into it, and then at times can overcomplicate it. So I don't want to be the AI pessimist. I don't want to be the anti, Matt Domo here. But how can we sort of connect AI to what we're doing today without overcomplicating it? And one of the things that many of listeners of this podcast may know, and people who read my content know, is like I hate doing things for the sake of doing it. And I feel that sometimes in this world of AI, people are adding AI or introducing AI into their platforms, their workflows, what have you, just because everyone else is doing it. So tell me about this idea of adding AI to, you use the word value a bunch. How does it add value without overcomplicating things on the day to day?
Okay, I'm gonna again address look, AI doesn't change outcomes. How leaders make decisions does. Think of the overarching thing here. If decisions don't change and you're using this technology, the outcomes don't change either. If the business doesn't operate different, new models, updating models, and using AI and data and intelligent technology as an enabler, it just adds activity and noise. That's what you just said. I'm doing activity. I got to show I'm doing something, but am I delivering value to the me's? That's your answer. That's the shift most leaders are missing. And what you've described is the exact stage of every AI, every technology shift we've seen in the past. You move from hype to FOMO to what really adds value, which you asked from the outset. When are you going to show me? When are you going to show me some results? And everything I just said leads you to the path to success.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because again, you always spark like memories in my head. Like, remember when everything had to be an app years ago, and you're like,
There's an
why
app
is
for that.
yeah, why does there have to be an app for that? There's no need. That app is irrelevant. So this idea of just doing it just because everyone else is doing it. I mean, also, there are certain things that everyone should have. Like, everyone should have a website. Someone should have, social media somewhere. But like, there's certain things that you should probably question. Like, do I really need that?
You hit a seminal point, Joe. Most of the messaging and everything is focused on tools. It's focused on methodologies. That's not what we're saying of what got you here, what isn't going to take you there. Right? So that's this thing. It's about leadership, it's about decision making and the new operating models that delight the me's and propel your business forward. That's not a tools, that's not a how conversation, it's a leadership conversation. And, again, that's why my book is setting in at the top of the categories it's talking about. It's there. The market is signaling that's what we need. And that's where we are.
That's awesome. That's great stuff. All right, let's finish up on a couple leadership points here. So, how can leaders build a culture where experimentation is encouraged? Because we talk about all these tools and things that leaders throw at people, but a lot of times the best ideas come from the people on the ground, the people who are actually working with these tools and experiencing it. How do leaders encourage that, but also like keep people's eye on the prize? Like, hey, I want you to do your job. I want you to be fulfilled, but I also want you to take risks and try new things.
You reward learning. It's not a test. We're not pass fail here. The outcome is clear, right? A lot of people think innovation is the new shiny thing. There's business innovation, new models, transforming existing models, how we work, the future of work. That's innovation too. And then the ways in which your employees work and leadership makes decision, all that's innovation, isn't it? All of those areas need to change moving forward. We've discussed that throughout this. So now, how do you change experimentation? The value is the learning. When you experiment, what did you learn? How does it impact the me's or not? What's equally important is what not to do, right? There's a myriad of things to do. But if you walk into a situation, you got the signal of what not to do, saves a ton of effort, doesn't it? That's learning. That's not pass fail. So you need to the rewarding of experimentation. Everybody will say they're innovative, but if it doesn't get the outcome you want quickly, do you fire the people? Do you admonish them, or do you say, "Look, what did we pull out of this that adds value to the me's?" And maybe what we thought wasn't there, right? Remember, the perfect plan rusts before you actually put it in the market. It's done.
Right.
And the speed from deciding to doing. So how do you do that? Through experimentation and moving quickly and looking at the data and looking at the outcomes and understand, how do I delight the me's? How do I drive the business outcomes? And what are the ways that we can do this that ensures we create durable value? That's the answer. Now that takes a culture shift. I can't tell you how many times early in my career in Microsoft it was crazy. We were one reorg away for perfection for a decade. Right? And I can't tell you how many times I get the memo, especially as got into senior leadership. Well, this person's going to go spend time with family. What does that tell you? Oops, didn't get what I wanted. So was it experimentation or innovation? And maybe they made some colossal screw ups. They did, and some did. Not gonna lie, saw it on Amazon too. Um, but what did you learn? What made it different? How do we delight the me's? What's the impact? What not to do? Maybe the idea is great, but how we implemented it was probably not the best choice. Windows Mobile. So, do you see?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, lastly, you mentioned family, but you mentioned family with a little bit of a wink of the eye. But you dedicate your book to your family, to your sons, Aiden and Maddox. Tell me why it was important to dedicate a book about AI to your family.
Well, I dedicated it to my sons and the memory of my mother, and I see a lot of opportunity and wasted energy. I see a lot of businesses out there that if they had the right methodologies and tools, they're talented people, but spinning their wheels. Think about everything we discussed today, FOMO and this and that, and I'm kind of spinning my wheels and I'm not moving the needle. So, look, my mother, when I was raised, told me anything's possible if you're willing to work hard enough for it. And I found that to be true. Second thing is, my son's generation is the first one in 100 years in this country that greater than 50% of them won't have a quality of life as good as their parents. My boys are going to be fine. I can't sit here and watch while everybody else's kids aren't, and I won't. And I won't. And see, it is sitting there. How do you build prosperity? You help people be successful. Businesses that are successful don't lay off people and cover it with AI. They create jobs, they create opportunity, they create prosperity. You teach people how to move forward and fish, you make them more productive, you create more opportunity. That's why I'm doing this. And I want my sons to move forward without fear. There is everything you read right now is fear to the detriment, honestly. And so look at, and why is that fear? Everything I created, and I created stuff from ground zero that powers most of modern internet, everybody told me I'd fail. Everyone, similar thing. And why is that? When you create the paradigm shift, people don't understand it. So they correlate it to what they do. So when you correlate it to how things work today, and leaders use that as the lens, you put the limitations and things that are there on it and don't recognize the shifts that actually happen. You have to conform to all the flaws in whatever's there, and leaders don't recognize it. Move forward without fear. You follow this playbook and you can develop your mission possible. It's why I did it. There is a mission possible. You talked about the fear, we talked about the inaction. You can have your mission possible, and if you do it right, everybody wins. And so what's the meta thing? You don't like the calculus, you change the game. That is the answer. Simple. I don't like the calculus with seeing people I respect, businesses I invest in, people around spinning their wheels. And I don't like the prospects of what I see with this generation, and they are our future. So what are we doing? That's why I'm doing it. And it's not just for my kids, it's for all of a society. A more productive society where people benefit, everybody wins. And I do this with my book, I do it with my keynotes, universities ask. 60% of this country is employed by 10-person businesses or less. Yet we hang every sandbag on the gondola so that the balloon doesn't rise. Why? It's even worse outside our country. Why? If that's the statistic, we need to juice it. And then finally, I do a lot of volunteering and things, like I'm helping the Space Wars Association to create the space defense ecosystem, and I won't take a dime. Nothing. Why? Because it's our future. Safety, prosperous, growth. And it's my honor and my pleasure to do that. That's why I'm doing this.
Here's Matt Domo, the name of the book, Everybody Wins, the Business Leader's Mission Possible Guide to AI Success. Matt, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Joe. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you have a great day, and thank you again for the opportunity.
And that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more information about Matt and our other amazing authors, go to theauthoritycompany.com.